Welcome to the Band of Brothers podcast. I'm here today with a good friend of mine, Russ Bird. Russ, welcome to the podcast, bud.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me, H.
You bet. You bet. Russ is one of the therapists now at the ranch in Bluffdale, and you work IOP too in Sandy, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Cool. And he's obviously an alumni and one of the brothers. So thanks for joining, bud. We just want to hear your story. So tell me a little bit about like what the first time you used. How old were you the first time?
Yeah, of course, man. Let's see, 50, I was 15, 15
15.
years old. You know, um, grew up in Utah County, American Fork, and was a teenager. What was I, sophomore in high school? I think I think I was in high school when this happened, and I had a group of some friends. I had a few friend groups, and one of them I knew had drank alcohol before,
Hmm.
and these were friends. I had played some sports with them and stuff, and had some good ties with these guys, but they had parents in their home who drank, and so they had alcohol in their home, and I had spent time with them when they had drank, and I kind of was nervous. I think I was kind of nervous about it and didn't know exactly what that meant to take a drink alcohol. I knew it was against the law and the old dare programs from when I was a kid, drugs are
Yeah.
bad. Like I had some of that going through my
Just
head.
say no.
Exactly. That's right. Just say no.
That one worked really well.
Clearly.
Yeah,
I wish it was that simple,
I
right?
know. The worst public drug and alcohol program ever.
Amen, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I had that background going on, and I also had some religious. My family's LDS, and I was going to church at the time, and kind of had that voice of God, that fear of God in me as well. Mm. And I knew right from wrong.
Yeah.
I knew it, and I'm having an emotional response right now because that moral compass, that knowing right from wrong, when it comes to addiction, doesn't really hold up a whole lot.
Hmm.
Um, Coming into a budding alcoholic and having some voices on one shoulder saying, "Don't do it, that's bad." And then I had this restlessness, irritability, and discontentedness as a child that I thought was normal. By
Hmm.
the way, I didn't know any different. I
It
didn't know
was
any
your normal, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'd carried that around, and it wasn't until years later when I've had some clarity and some recovery, and we'll get to that, that I realized I'd been carrying that pain and that shame around for so long.
Hmm. So the
Of
first time you used, tell me about the feeling. Like what did it do for you?
course, my first sip of alcohol was the taste, and I remember everything about it. It was a monumental part of my recovery, my journey, and it gave me that feeling of ease and comfort. It was warm, and I could breathe. I could take a deep breath,
Mhm. Wow.
and things were okay. You know, it brought they call alcohol spirits. Back in medieval times, right? They call them spirits, and it gave me a pseudo and a fake spiritual experience where I felt at ease, at comfort. I was all of a sudden just super connected to the people that I was around, and we had this common bond, and I chased that feeling for a really long time, you
Yeah.
know, right? And yeah, that feeling of ease and comfort that came with a few drinks. I remember I had a few drinks that first time, and it's funny now. At the time, it was not that funny, but our friend's dad had this bottle of clear liquor. I don't remember what it was, but we poured water back into it so that
Yeah.
he didn't notice and he found out. It was about 2 weeks later, and he came to his son, Yeah, so we all got in trouble for that, and I started to have some consequences, because I continued drinking and teenager through high school, and marijuana was a piece of that. Quickly, shortly after that, I was in um, some social groups where that was readily available, and the consequences started hitting it. And one of the things that grounded me, and so today, fast forward a little bit, I'm a dad. H, I know you're a dad, and something that I believe in. We'll see what my kids do, but I believed in playing in like a team sport. Okay,
Mhm.
so and I was playing on some team sports and had that purpose and that direction and some of that discipline there that I think for a while kept me grounded. I think without that, I would have been worse off. And
Yeah.
so I had these organized sports and I had practices to be to and
You
some
can't get
commitment
caught either, right? I mean, you get bounced off the team.
getting there. Yeah, you're getting there, man. Exactly. And so fast forward to senior year, I'm on a varsity squad and me
What'd
and
you
another
play?
football. This was
Football.
football.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Me and a good friend on the team had gone camping with some other people and drank. And somehow, I don't care today, but somehow the word got out that, hey, Russ and this other individual were drinking, and the coach found out. And so we got suspended our first game senior year. And the way that my coach handled this, I really respect. I really respect
Mhm.
it today. Um, Gosh, man, a lot of love for that guy. He sat me and this other individual down and he said, I'm not going to tell your parents. He said, you are. You're going to go home tonight.
Hmm.
And I think that's when I really, for the first time, had some conflict with the choices that I was making. And I call them choices today. But looking back, I know that the hooks of addiction were seated in there. I wasn't aware at the time. But I, 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 I faced those consequences. I faced them the best that I could. And you know, I think all of the consequences, the shameful experiences like that compounded over time. And I think that was an important one early on in those teenage years where I felt shame. I felt like I was a bad person. I
Yeah.
felt worthless. And my parents, bless their heart, they didn't know what to do with me. They hadn't had another sibling who would drink, by the way. I was the
Yeah.
first. And so I mean, they loved me. I think they grounded me, something like
Yeah.
that.
So
And
were
said,
you
don't,
still going to church and stuff while you're
yeah,
drinking? Yeah.
yeah, I was at that time. Yeah, it's an important part. And so that shame from religious standpoint is if you're doing these things, therefore you are not worthy. And good luck feeling any of my love. This is God's voice in
Mhm.
my head. And
Yeah.
differently today, but that's what was going on.
That
That's what
was
was
your voice in your head.
Yeah, amen, dude. That's a good way, but that was my voice, exactly.
He
So
was trying to tell you something else.
I think you're right, man. I think you're
Not
right.
through the religion, because sometimes the culture of all religions, in Utah it's LDS, and where I grew up it was Catholicism, and we learned certain things in certain ways, maybe that we aren't even taught that way, and then the culture becomes that kind of perfectionistic thing, and in the LDS culture, there's a lot of responsibility given to teenage boys to bless sacrament and do some other things, and so if you're not able to do that, it's very obvious, So you either are deceitful or and go up there and bless sacrament or pass it or whatever, or you sit with your parents and then questions get asked. I would imagine. I mean, I didn't grow up LDS, but I would imagine there's a huge amount of internal shame going on.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you hit the nail on the head. I think you hit the nail on the head with kind of how the culture was for me as a young teenager growing up in that and others too, like my friends, they if there was anything that was what a sin, anything that was a sin, whether it was anything sexual, drugs and alcohol. I mean, it was a, you know, don't ask, don't tell. This is a secret, and that deceit that you mentioned,
Mhm.
that's kind of the way that I learned to cope with things is
Yeah.
I've got to hide this. I've got to hide this because this will reflect bad on me and it'll reflect bad on my family. And
And that's
so
perfect because this disease loves that.
sure,
This
sure,
disease hides in the shadows and in the secrets and don't tell, and that's how it thrives. It can't live in the light, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And it was growing.
Yeah.
The disease was growing in me, man. And so fast forward yeah, I won't fast forward, the whole way, but if you look over the next, there was at 18, the next 5 years, 4 years, there was more of that. There was
Mhm.
more of that. There was more of the shame. There was more of the separation from people who love me, from my family, from friends. And there was, with LDS culture at 19 at the time, this is 20 years ago. Uh, 19, you're called on a mission. You're going on a mission, and you're going and serving God and being of service to your fellow man. Um, and there was a period of time where um, I had strived to do that. I thought that was a worthy, selfless endeavor. Still do, by the way, and
Mhm.
and think that's a good cause to be engaged in. But I couldn't stay sober. Um,
Mhm.
I couldn't stay sober, and I would see my friends. These are friends that I played sports with, grew up with. They'd get their callings, and they'd go serve, and they'd be applauded for it. And here I was, not able to put a day together sober.
So
You know,
were you trying to not use?
to not use,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. To serve an LDS mission to some degree, I was trying and saw, my
Mhm.
family would have loved for me to go do that, but I was trying to stay sober. Yes,
You were feeling the disease at 18, 19. I like for me, I was like I could quit all the time. I just couldn't stop starting.
sure.
So I was like I was a great quitter, you know. And then by the
Yeah,
next morning it's like crap, okay, tomorrow. And and
right.
and you watch that. So that's progressing at a pretty early age with you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I love that you mentioned earlier age that you grew up in Catholicism, and that this kind of this religious shame or religious pressure, whatever you want to call it, is not restricted to the religion I grew up in or the religion you grew up in.
Yeah.
And the more clients that I've worked with, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, H, you see like, wow, that's a thing that happens in many parts of the country,
Yep.
and it's not restricted because I felt like it was just me and it was just my circle and just my family that was going
Yeah.
through.
Yeah,
So
no, and I think it's how we learn it. I think a lot of us are perfectionists and we're high achievers. And so if we're going to be religious, we're going to go do all, we want to be the best player on whatever team we're on, whether it's football or church or whatever it is. You go to an AA meeting in Minnesota, South Dakota, and you hear I'm a recovering Catholic. You go to Alabama, I'm a recovering Southern Baptist. You go to
yeah, right,
you go to
exactly.
American Fork, I'm a recovering Mormon.
There you go.
So it really doesn't
Yeah,
matter. Um,
yeah, it doesn't. And that's to learn that later on allowed me to really just be kinder to any individuals that maybe I held some resentment towards, and ultimately be kinder towards me and pave a way for a better relationship with God as
awesome.
well. But I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit here.
Okay.
Right, so here I'm in my early 20s, and the disease consistently and aggressively progressed. That's probably the
Mhm.
best way I could put it. Where I'm right out of high school, 19, and I was with some people who had some opiates, never really done opiates. I'm like, sure, let's try this. I had some people that had some cocaine. Sure, let's try this. And some people with, you name it, like you name it. I was like, hey, if this'll change what's going on in here, and this will put out that flame of shame a little bit,
Right.
I'm
Right.
down. I'm down. I'm game for it because it was burning. And throughout this, my family, I'd pretty much separated from them. I
You in
was fortunate.
college now, or are you working, or what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah. So I was fortunate enough to have like a summer gig. It was this summer job where I could go work for 4 or 5 months in different parts of the country, and so I would strike out on my own, I would work hard, but it was fueled by, if I wasn't working, I was drinking. I was trying to find the back alley drug dealer, all that stuff, and pretty much any city I went to in the country, I could find it. You
Right.
know, so water kind of seeks its own level, and so I could find it. I could find people who drank like I did. I could find people who liked the drugs I liked, and we'd be friends until they ran out of drugs or I ran out of money. And
Right.
so, yeah, right. And I say friends, I'm using air quotes, friends, right? Like acquaintances. And
Hmm.
that was the thing that connected us, was that substance, that chemical. And things progressed to be pretty bad. My health I wasn't taking care of my health. I was underweight. Um, I was, any of the money that I was able to earn and work for during that, summer period, 4 or 5 months, the other 7 or 8 months, I was, not doing anything productive. And,
Hmm.
my MO was to get loaded, get as drunk and as high as I could. Um, and that kind of came to a screeching halt after a couple legal interactions, where I got some possession charges, and those scared me. I mean, they scared me, and because they were felonies at the time, um, and that's since changed in Utah law. Possessions of certain substances used to be felonies, but
Yeah.
um, and all throughout this, who I don't think there's any way to talk about this without a little bit of emotion. So, um, when I was sober, uh, my mother had told me, in those, when I was at my worst, um, that she had fully accepted that I was going to die from this
Hmm.
disease. And I remember when she told me that, it hit home,
Hmm.
and I was, I felt for her. And now I have kids. I didn't have kids then, and it's hitting home in a different way. Um, where I can't begin to imagine what she went through, what I put her through with one of her own children, and accepting that they were going to die. She had when she was a teenager, she had lost an older brother to this disease as well. Um, it runs in my family a little bit, and
Hmm.
he had passed away of an overdose in his 20s. And so I think she had felt, she had been through that, and she saw me, what I was doing, and it just fully accepted, that's what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
you know, she waited a while. I think I was over a year sober till she told me that. And
Wow.
yeah, and just unbelievably grateful I didn't have to put her fully through that.
Yeah.
Uh, gosh, man. Um, so yeah, that's it. It runs in my family a little bit. Age. There's
So
some.
there's genetics to this. We know that, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I think when they
And
first squished the grape, there was a brown there with a cup underneath as they were squishing. That's my
history has deep roots.
alcoholism side. My other side is my mental health
Yeah,
side.
sure.
So I got the trifecta.
Mhm.
Um, we all
Mhm.
did probably. So So
You bet.
tell me about like your moment of clarity, like your the proverbial bottom, like what happened, what nudged you in, you know?
Sure, man. Um, things were particularly bad. When I called mom, and that's kind of funny that I called mom because this whole, 5, 6, 7 year journey, I was this, using drugs and drinking was my MO, and I thought I was pretty cool. Okay, I know
Mhm.
differently today that I wasn't that cool, but I was trying to put on that facade and that mask, and in my dire time, like I call mom, like that's how hard I was. And so I was struggling, and I called mom, and this was a different call. This wasn't, hey mom, can I borrow $20? Hey mom, can I come crash on the trampoline at night because I got nowhere to
Mhm.
sleep? She'd let me do that. um a few times she wouldn't let me in the house, but I could sleep on the trampoline out back. This was, hey, I need some real help. I'm i'm hurting. And so she came and picked me up in Salt Lake from American Fork. And my little sister, this is just a side note, probably should have included this too. She had just entered substance abuse treatment as well 3 months prior to that. She was going on the same path I was.
Mhm.
She just started younger, which was a little scarier. She started at 13.
Mhm.
And so she was in her substance. She was doing well in it, by the way. And I remember I resented that because here I
Mhm.
was, the older brother, and just kind of being a terrible example. So there's that
Mhm.
flame of shame again, right? And
Yeah.
so call mom, need some help. She's like, you can come home, but if you use, you're done. If you bring any drugs here, you're done. We'll drop you right back off of this crack house we were picking you up at. And I I said okay, and I meant it. I committed to that. I said okay, I'm done with this. This is going to kill me. And so I go home, and to their home. And shortly after, 3 or 4 days, I'm having someone come drop off drugs, and because I was in withdrawal, I was in full blown withdrawal from opiates at this time. And
Opiates. Okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah, opiates were the I think the catalyst to this bottom. They were the main catalyst, I think. And you know, and I remember one night, um, I fell asleep or passed out, one of the two, and woke up in the morning. And this is down in my parents' basement, and I come out the door, and my whole family was in the basement. And I remember thinking, uh-oh, like that's not a good thing to wake up to. They're all just waiting on me. And it absolutely was an intervention. And come to find out, my parents had been talking with and mm, they sat down with me, and it wasn't all that different from Dr. Phil on the show. And they each went around and told me how my addiction had affected them. And I remember thinking, y'all are wrong. I need a few $100 in a car, and I'm going to get to work, and I'm going to be fine.
Mhm.
Um, and I told him that, and I told him that, and my parents said, if that's the case, we're not helping you with any money. We're not helping you get a car. We'll take you back up to the house we picked you up at. And I owed those people money at that house that I went to, so I wasn't planning on showing my face there for a minute. And so it was either go to treatment, and they had found this place called Ren'ais'sance Ranch. Um, I think you helped them organize that intervention, H. I don't.
I may have.
You may have, right? Played a part in this, man, a role in this, man. And thank you, by the way.
You're welcome.
I hope I've thanked you for that.
Yeah, a couple hundred times, dude.
Okay. I mean it, man. I mean that's that was pivotal because they asked me They said, we'll take you back to the house, or you can go to this treatment for 60 days at this place called Ren'ais'sance Ranch. I think they handed me a brochure, looked at a brochure, had some horses, and looked like a nice property. And you remember the brochure?
I do. Yeah.
And they said, this got me, man. This got me because they said, if you're gonna go there, you got to call this guy named H. And I remember thinking, I'm thinking like, okay, no one's gonna hold my hand through this. Like this, I've got to kind of step up and maybe grow up a little bit and take some action, take some initiative. Like my parents
Mhm.
aren't gonna call and line it up for me. I got to do it.
Mhm.
And that spoke to me. It was like, okay, this is probably gonna be a big boy thing. And I
Mhm.
had done some big boy things in my life, not a ton, but like I don't know. I think sports helped with that, and school and stuff. And so I
You're what,
came,
23 at the
yeah,
time?
22,
22?
23, right around there, 22, almost 23, I think at this
Okay.
time, and called you. Said, hey, and you were expecting my call, and you knew who I was, and said, cool, man, let's get to work. Um, the details beyond that, I just know I landed there and felt really sick from opiate withdrawals for a couple of weeks, and showed up at the house, and there's a few things that I remember and stood out. Gosh, uh, there's an individual who worked there at the ranch. His name was Stevie Hart.
Oh, yeah.
Stevie gave me a hug when I got there, and I remember thinking that was weird. Um, and I we should acknowledge, man, it was what, a couple weeks ago we heard Stevie passed away, right?
Yeah, I was at his funeral Friday.
Glad you went. Glad you went,
Yeah,
brother. It's tough to hear about. Um, Grateful for him. Grateful for Stevie. Um, he
he's a
helped in those.
great man.
You bet. You bet. Did a lot for a lot of guys, and was crucial in those kind of earlier ranch days, right?
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. I remember I came in with when I checked in the ranch and I met Stevie, I had this big old 5 pound tub of protein powder because I was going to work out and get put my healthy weight back on. And Stevie just he laughed at me and took that bottle of protein. It's like, you're not gonna get this, man. And I remember I was pissed at the time. I was upset, and and I totally get it now, being on the other side of things. And my plans, the ranch wasn't going to cater to my plans. I learned
Yeah.
early, right? Um, yeah, yeah, man. I met some cool guys. I met some really cool guys early on, and um, in the 12 steps, my exposure to the 12 steps prior to entering treatment was from movies. I thought it was a group of people got together and talked about their feelings, and I actually wasn't that wrong. I'm actually
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
wrong.
Tell me
But
about your experience with the men in the house
of course,
with the brothers.
as you can imagine, when you put a dozen guys, 12 or 14 guys that are all in very early sobriety, that there's going to be some fireworks. Sometimes there's going to be some conflict,
Hmm.
going to be some tension. Uh, and I learned in those first 60 days, those crucial 60 days, that the strength of the relationship um, increases through conflict.
Mm.
And I learned that. And I had always tried to shy away from conflict. It
Hmm.
was out of fear and out of shame. And, a lot of things that I learned early growing up is just, let's avoid conflict. And,
Right.
even if it's at the cost of your sanity, But the ranch started to teach me a different way and these guys I was with started to teach me a different way. And there were a good core group of us that went through there. I don't know, probably 8 or 9 of us that stayed really close afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple of them aren't with us anymore, and they've passed on, and I'm just grateful, like really grateful, for the time that I had with them and for the help that they gave me early on. Because here I was, this 22-year-old kid. I think there may have been one other guy that was my age that went through the ranch, but I think I was the youngest in, at least in that core group, and
Yeah.
felt it. I felt like a kid, you know. I had drugs and alcohol to numb all these emotions for so long, and you take those away from the equation, and um, there I was left to learn how to deal with my emotions,
Yeah.
with the help of others, with the help of those guys.
Well, yeah, you were through with Carl and Sam and
Yeah,
Jim. All three passed away that were you crossed paths with at some point in there, and Steve. So yeah, it's a terminal fatal disease if we keep using. So
absolutely, man. And unfortunately, this is the disease that um, some of us have to die for the rest of us to take it serious,
yeah,
right? Wish it was a different way, but I'm grateful for the sacrifice of those so that I do take it serious. And those guys
yeah,
that I got to meet early on and learn to love and connect with. And there's a 4 or 5, probably 5 of us that I know personally, like I've talked to in the last 3 months. Here we are. This was 2009. Here we are in 2023.
who are they? I'm going to shut this shade. Sorry.
Yeah, of course, man. I saw Taz this weekend. Saw Taz. Saw Coombsy a few weeks ago. I talked to Sherm very regularly.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, I went golfing with Mark Fishbeck this summer. Yeah, there's a good crew of us. There's a good crew of us, and I'll usually get Sherman Fish to go golfing because they're down in Utah County, and Coombsy's up kind of in your neck of the woods where you're at right now, a little further north, I think,
yeah.
right? And
He's back in Boise now, I think.
is he? Yeah, okay. But yeah,
And
I got to see that.
Sherm's gonna be on in 3 weeks on a podcast.
Fantastic. That's
Yeah,
Sherm's my guy, man. I
yeah,
learned a lot from him. Learned a lot from all those guys. Yeah, but I got to see Taz this weekend down in St. George. His family's doing good. He's raising teenage daughters, and it's
yeah.
just which you know a little bit about, I think.
Yeah. So how important is it to for you to develop that relationship? Because I think it's a lot of times people ask, well, why is it a male only and why don't you co-ed? And co-ed is the real world, it's reality. And my opinion is that, little boys and little girls don't play well together in treatment. Not like, oh, they're going to have sex, but it stops the process. And I think it's important it was for me anyway, to get into relationship with men, to be honest with men, to be vulnerable and open and share my emotions and not, punch each other and, oh, how about them bears and all that macho crap. But I think, people that don't keep those relationships out, so once they get out of treatment, are really, in my opinion, missing out and not getting the point of treatment, which is relationships. I think it's one of the main points of life is that's something that goes with us into eternity. And I noticed and watched many people come through, and I noticed that your group in particular, and the men a little before you and men after you, because you kept coming back into the alumni. You didn't go through with Fish or Sherm, I don't think.
I didn't.
Um,
Sure. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
yeah,
Fish
so
and
you
I
met
are
them.
huge
You
fans as
met
well.
them because you kept coming back
That's right.
as an alumni and serving the other guys and being there for the guys. So this is kind of the Band of Brothers podcast, and I think it's really crucial and now you work there. I mean, you see the guys that that don't make it, maybe not necessarily die, but don't stay sober for whatever reason, hopefully come back. But a lot of times they sort of disconnect from the fellowship. Do you notice that, or is that, you think that's, and I don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be the ranch fellowship. It's then you get into your AA group or NA group or whatever A you're going to, and it's kind of like the old sitcom Cheers, like you walk in and everybody goes Norm, like they know when you're not there, and they call and say, where you been, are you okay, and that we thing, I think, is really critical. And I noticed that in particular with you guys. I'm not a social media guy much, but I would notice all of a sudden 8 or 9 of these ranch guys are at the AA National Convention in Atlanta or somewhere. I don't remember where you got, or you're at an Angels game, or I don't know where. You guys were all over the place, like doing fun shit, like enjoying life, enjoying your recovery. So tell me a little bit about that, because I just think that is so critical to long-term recovery, is replacing the old friends with new friends, and the old places with new places, and the old things, with new things. So talk a little bit about that.
Of course. Yeah, I liked what you said, that the point of treatment's relationships, or a main point of treatment is relationships. Um, because my relationships, prior to treatment were surface level, keep the mask on, and continue with a chemical solution. And so learning with other men early on, was important for me. And if the ranch, if someone is seeking co-ed treatment, I promise that I can help them, or you can help them find a co-ed treatment center. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's something special about the ranch being, gender specific with that. Um, and yeah, it's real life that, there's male and females, and or whatever gender you believe in.
Right. Yeah. We won't
There,
even go
real
there.
life. Sure,
Yeah.
sure. That's Pandora's box. We're not open that, but that is real life. I
Yeah.
know I needed a break from real life. I needed a break, needed a timeout, and that really helped me. And so just to kind of be able to focus on those issues that for me as a man were especially prevalent, I think is the right
Mm-hmm.
word, um, was important. And those relationships, this brotherhood that that started being forged in those first 60 days is absolutely the most valuable piece. It's not the only piece, but it's the most valuable piece that I took from the ranch
Mm-hmm.
age.
Yeah.
And the other pieces to be acknowledged. I mean, you said relationships. Yeah, I've got the relationships with these friends that I love and would do anything for, and I know would do anything for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's also a relationship with the guy upstairs as well that came from that. And the 12 steps gave me a path to, to connect with my higher power, and, realizing that I wasn't a bad person because of the things that I did. I'd done some bad things. That's true for most men who come through those doors. We've done some bad things, some things we're not proud of, some things we regret. But the steps kind of gave us a way, not kind of, gave me a way to become whole again. And
Yeah.
so I'm grateful for that, and get to share that with these other brothers, these other bros that are just, it's the coolest damn thing, man. To go to
Well, that's the
those.
thing, is we're still, like one of my fears in getting sober was I'm not going to have fun anymore. I'm going to be around a bunch of boring people, or the people in the rooms are the same people we were in the bars with. We're just in a different room, sitting in different chairs, doing different things. We're still pretty crazy and fun. And, I remember, the annual golf tournament, it'd be like, and not many golf tournaments do you have to say, okay, please keep your shirts on and don't drive the carts on the on the greens. you,
Right.
and but I think, like, that's, so there's a lot of fun in recovery, and I think that's important. And the steps help us get back into relationship with ourselves and with our neighbor, our brothers, and with God. and it really connects those things together. And I think after that, then after a certain period of time, we're ready to get into and go find a woman, a wife. It's like, but I know I couldn't. Like I had to stay away from that for more than a year for me to figure out like who I was and how to relate. And I had to actually have a platonic female friend in AA for the first time in my
Mhm.
life because I always had a motive with women. So if I'd have gone to treatment with women, I'd have just been sitting there trying to figure out how I was gonna, get them somewhere,
That's right.
not worrying about anything else. So you get out. Did you went to aftercare?
Good. Moved into a sober living facility as well. Not facility, a house.
Mm-hmm.
Aftercare. Aftercare was important with the transition from that, that timeout, that break from real life, back into real life. And I think it was 2 weeks after you left house, you needed to have a job, you needed to be a productive citizen, and that level of accountability helped me. I remember I didn't have a car, I didn't have a driver's license because of some of those legal scrapes that I mentioned earlier, and so what that did for me is like force me out of my comfort zone because to get to aftercare, I had to organize how to get there,
Mm-hmm.
transportation and a ride, and I also learned the public transportation system pretty
Mm-hmm.
well,
Yeah.
uh, right? And walked a lot. I walked a lot too, and all those things kept me humble. They kept me humble, and um, it was. I'm actually grateful today that I didn't. And I see all sorts of different things happen with guys that get sober, but I remember thinking it would have been nice if my family would have, hey, can you buy me like a beater car,
Mm-hmm.
to drive around? And then it was like, well, wait, I don't have a license, so like they weren't interested in that.
Yeah.
uh, but that's the mindset that I had at the time, is like, well, I'll just drive careful, and so I was still pretty sick when I got out. I got better, but yeah, all of that struggle, all of that conflict of, gosh, I'm going to have to ride the bus. It's going to take me 2.5 hours to get what would be a 20-minute car ride. Um, I learned a lot, and I know I grew through that. I
Yeah.
had to learn to manage my time better. I had to learn to communicate with other people. I had to learn to go outside of my comfort zone,
Organize, you know.
organize a little bit.
Yeah.
hmm There's a saying that you said, H, early on, that I've always
Oh,
remembered, that successful people write things down. Yeah, I started
I
to
thought
do
there was
that.
going to be some profanity in
No,
there
I'll keep
somewhere.
that. I'll keep that for later.
There's a
But
little bit of that.
yeah, successful people write things down. So you mentioned that organization, and I think by some measures we're successful people today because we're sober and we're dads, and we have jobs, and we're trying to help other guys. So by
So
that
tell me
measuring,
about your journey into your career now.
sure. Let's see, it was 3 year between 3 and 4 years sober, and I had finished a couple semesters of school right out of of college, right after high school, and so not much, but always had that goal of wanting to go back, and my family is pretty educated. Most of them have degrees, siblings and parents, and so that was a goal of mine. And I went back into school, and I went into something completely different than what I'm doing now. Um, it wasn't therapy or social work, but I got a bachelor's degree. It took me 5 years to get a bachelor's degree after the fact. But school was tough. School was tough, at times. And I remember I had one of the brothers that I went through the ranch with. He had a master's degree, and he told me, oh, did he have a master's? He had a degree. Okay. At the time, I don't remember what it
Who was
was.
that?
Coombs, Jason Coombs.
Oh, yeah.
And now that I think about it, I think he had a bachelor's when we went through the
Yeah, he
ranch.
probably lied and told you he had a master's at that
He made.
point.
You better get him on this podcast at some point.
I'm trying, yeah.
Yeah, good. Um, and he told me that I would find recovery in school. I remember he told me that, and I was like, like I don't see how that's gonna play out, but let's go, and I did. He was right. He was right. I began to find things in common with other people and connections, relationships that were pretty cool. And that forced me outside of my comfort zone because I couldn't be like, hey, I liked heroin. And
Mhm.
now I'm sober. Like I didn't lead off with that in school.
Mhm.
There were a few people I told eventually, but after I got to know them.
Mhm.
But I did. I found some recovery there in school. And
And that's kind of common too when you're first out of residential, you because you're used to TC and then you start puking on people and they're like, whoa, 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 like like you don't want to tell your employer, like there people discriminate and there's like there's certain time and place
yeah, that's right.
for
That's
things. But
right.
everybody wants to, you get out of treatment, you want to process everything, and
hmm You want to
sometimes
tell someone you got 60 days sober from
yeah,
heroin and look at you like I've
yeah,
never used heroin ever.
yeah, yeah,
So know your audience, right? Know your
yeah.
audience.
So when
So
did you decide to pivot into social work?
finished school in 2017. That was 2017 when I um, graduated, had a bachelor's. Felt really good about that. And I was having a phone call. I remember exactly where I was. I was at the gas station and at Thanksgiving Point, and called my parents. This was like right after, I'd finished my last class. And I said, we're really proud of you. Those are words for a long time I didn't hear from my parents. We're
Yeah.
proud of you. I hear them a lot more today, thankfully. And this was my response. I said, thanks. I appreciate your guys' support because they help, emotionally, they helped me a lot through that, through school. Um, but I remember telling them it's not enough. I remember like I have this bachelor's degree. It's in a field I'm honestly not terribly passionate about. Um, it's not enough. I need to go back. I told him that right after I graduated. It took me
Mhm.
2 more years to go back to grad school to go into social work. But I think I knew a couple days after I finished bachelor's that I
Yeah.
was going to go back. And
Yeah.
um, trying to think of the time frame. I had a kid in between then in that break. My wife and I had our first kid, and um, yeah, because this was 2017. She was born in early 2019. And so I was back in grad school shortly after she was born. I had so many examples. I mean, your brother, H, one of the
Yeah.
clinicians when I was in house as a social worker, and I look at what he was able to do for me and other guys in my group, and the influence that he had on us with his story, his own
Yeah.
story of addiction, and then to be able to come from a clinical angle
Yeah.
with us. I really admired that. I think Steve was the first social worker that actually got to like work with and
Yeah.
interact with, and it planted a
Everybody
seed.
thought he was sleeping in group, but he was. I think he was part of the time, but he claims he was trying to listen and get inspiration, which I think he was.
Sure.
But he's very
Well,
gifted, and you have the same gift that he had. You guys have that gift of intuition and empathy and love, you know, that not many people have. So I'm grateful you went into the field you went into.
too, man.
Yeah,
Too. It was a path that was paved by other people like your brother H, and
yeah,
so I'm grateful to him, man. And yeah, it was and God was a part of that. My higher power was a part of this, and just the people. School is there's a lot to it. Now that I'm thinking back to it, there's a lot of hoops and fees and tests and there's just so much stuff. There's so much stuff that you're responsible for, and
yeah.
I needed help. I know I needed help, man, and so God was a huge piece of this equation throughout all that. I'm not a guy who's just motivated by his own uh his own ambition.
Mhm.
I need some help, and sometimes I need a shift of perspective too, where my disease is selfish and narrow and small, and to look at, hey, you need to go do some work so that you can like be of better service to your fellow man. When I have that perspective, I'm motivated. Go grow and do things to improve yourself, Russ, so you can be a better dad. Like that's the stuff that
Yeah.
can motivate me.
And you have
Versus,
an incredible wife.
yeah, man. Did you say life or wife? Both are
Wife.
true. Wife.
Wife.
Yeah, man.
Most of us can't really reach our potential. At least I can speak for me until I got married and I married the right person and I had a person that was 100% behind me, like no matter what,
Yeah.
and I know I don't know your wife well, but I know that about her. And that's key. I think a lot of people in recovery and a lot of people with addiction, we have this strange sense of loyalty
Mm.
and this and people betray that, even though we might do that while we're using, but once we find that person, magical things happen, and it's happened for you. So now you're what you're what's your sobriety date?
March 5th of 2009.
March 5th, 2009. So you just celebrated 14 years. You've got how many kids?
Two kids.
Two
Yeah, man.
kids.
Hmm.
Master's degree, and you're working as a therapist.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Pretty awesome, dude.
When you line it out like that, um, like, man, there's no doubt in my mind this recovery deal is real. You know, um, being that scared kid where um, couldn't put together a day sober, if his life depended on it. And it did depend on it. Um, because I fully believe I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the 12 steps, for the people that I've met early on, um, for those brothers that I met in house, for you guys who were working there too, Um, you guys were stewards to keep that place sacred so that that work could happen. I take that really seriously today in my role. And I appreciate the example you were early on and still are as well, man. Just want you to know that.
Well, I appreciate that, dude. You know how I feel about you, and I just you walk into that place and it's got the exact same feel. And I think the faces change and the clients change and the staff changes here and there, but the spirit of that is, I you we were probably still doing it when you were there, but we always kept an empty chair in every group for the Savior,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew that, you know we all know that we need that extra power from God to do anything, and it's a God thing. And you know I'm honored to know you. I'm just so glad you're doing what you're doing. You're just a natural therapist. I Some people have that, some don't. I'm a sudsy and I'm an interventionist, but I'm the guy throwing the Kleenex box at the guy during individual session, saying "nut up" and just go. I don't have that level of patience
Yeah,
with
sure.
people, and men like you and people like you are the ones that really are in the front lines and absorbing all the emotion and being there for people. And I just don't know many people like you, dude. I don't know anybody with the tools and the gifts and the strength and the patience and the love and the empathy. And I think you're just a special person. And, I'm just grateful that I didn't go to your funeral. I didn't have to go to your funeral, and I'm tired of going to them. I'm sure we'll continue going to them. Um, But what would you say to somebody right now listening? Like what what would you say about your recovery, your sobriety, what you do every day, or just just kind of in closing, like how would you wrap it up?
Sure, man. Um, Appreciate the kind words. AHI. Someone's out there still struggling listening to this. Let's say there was a piece, maybe a couple pieces of my story you related to. I don't know. And you're like, man, I can't stay sober, and I've got a list of problems going on. Maybe ask yourself, like, what do I got to lose by trying this recovery deal?
Hmm.
Got to lose, man. I mean, it's an old AAA cliche that will refund your misery. If
Right.
you don't like what you get from this recovery deal, we'll give you your misery back if you'd like. And I know there's a stepping point. There's like a decision to be made. Like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I had to do that. I'm going to give this a shot, and um, that's scary. And that's really really scary in the beginning. And I promise that you're not alone. You're out there struggling. If there's who I mean, I think whether you're an alcoholic or an addict, that we all have some things in common. I know that there are drugs out there today that I've never used, um, but I know I'm addicted to them. Even
Hmm.
though I've never ingested them. Um, and so if you're out there and some of those things have their hooks in you, that there is a way out. There's a freaking way out, and you don't have to do it alone. And if you're anything like me, you couldn't do it alone. And there's a lot of humility in asking for help and admitting you have a problem. Um, but that was maybe the hardest thing I had to do. Um, there were other hard things, but the hardest thing was like, wow, I'm really gonna admit defeat here, and I'm gonna
Hmm.
surrender. That was not in my uh, vocabulary. Those words to
Especially an athlete.
yeah, sure, sure. It's yeah, man. It's fight for every inch and don't give up, never give up. Those types of attitudes, and with addiction, I found that to be less than helpful. That
Yeah.
there's actually a lot of power in sometimes giving up the fight and accepting some help in a different way. So while those mindsets maybe do help us get the extra yard in football or hit the 3-pointer, with mental health, it just doesn't translate quite the same.
It's that paradox of you have to surrender to win.
That's right. That's right.
And that sometimes that doesn't equate right away. But it's true, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree, man. I agree.
Well, buddy, thank you for coming on, man. I sure appreciate it. And it was good talking to you a little more than I see every now and then at a
Yeah,
group at the ranch. But congrats on your life of just abundance, and for doing the things you've done and the accomplishments you've had. And there's a bunch more in front of you. So, don't lay off. And I sure love you.
appreciate that, Age. I love you a lot too, and because of the great things I have in my life, I owe a lot. I owe a lot, and we got to keep giving back to this deal, man. So this was a cool opportunity to do just that. So I thank you too, Age.